All right, this is John Ralston. I'm with WXBM Radio, and I'm here with my special guest, Paul Gordon. He's a renal social worker. He works for Fresenius Kidney Care. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Glad to be here.
Now, we're talking about dialysis today, and something I don't know a ton about. I had a little chance to get some information on it, but it seems like a thing that most people don't understand. Can you tell us what it is and how you got involved with dialysis in the first place?
Uh, Dialysis is this caveat. It's actually a huge expenditure, and there's all these people everywhere going to dialysis. You can't drive in a populated area. You can't drive 5 miles without going past the dialysis center, and nobody knows it. I had no idea about this. When I was a young kid going to church, the pastor at the end of church would say, if anybody could give Bill Watkins a ride to dialysis, then call Irma at Ulysses 555. And I was sure that Bill Watkins was the only guy in the world on dialysis. How I got into it when I graduated from Temple as a social worker, I needed a social worker job, and I answered an ad in the paper, and I wound up in dialysis because it was close to my home. Most people in dialysis have this fantastic story about their Aunt Irma on dialysis or something, and I don't. But a nurse named Ginny Jacobs told me when I was there, if you're here for a year, you're going to be here for life. And that was almost 25 years ago.
Wow. Wow.
So what dialysis is really people's kidneys stop working, and they're unable to. I mean, all of our kidneys are breaking down essentially most of our lives. When you get down to about 25% of your kidney function, you become eligible for a kidney transplant, but you do not yet need dialysis. Many people are walking around at 25% of their kidney function. They don't even know they have renal failure. Okay, it's not, it sneaks up on you. When you get down to 15%, then you go to stage 5, which is where you require dialysis. Your little bit of kidney function is no longer getting you through your days. You're starting to have swelling in your ankles, maintaining fluid, toxins are building up in your blood and stuff. And so that's exactly what we do in dialysis is we remove those toxins and those fluids.
Now, I know there are two main companies that deal with dialysis, Fresenius and what is the other one? I forget. DaVita, right. And so you can go to these centers, I'm sure, but is there another way? Are there different kinds of dialysis? I think you were talking about home dialysis at one point.
Yeah, well, I'm a big proponent. One of my other jobs is for a company called Compass Home Dialysis, and home dialysis is getting bigger and bigger. It's always been out there. In fact, somebody told me this. You'd have to Google it to find out its actual origins. But the Egyptians were doing something like peritoneal dialysis.
No way, really?
To keep themselves alive back in the day. So there's hemodialysis is the type of dialysis where it's kind of traditional, where you go to the center, we take your blood out of your body, we run it through a filter, through a machine, we clean it all up, warm it back up, and stick it back in your body, okay? Peritoneal dialysis, rather than doing it that way, they put a little tube in your belly, and the dialysis, the purification of your blood happens in there. In a nutshell, if you go back to, high school biology, to the process of osmosis, where you have one fluid on one side of a semi-permeable membrane and another on the other side. If one is rich in minerals, those minerals will cross over that membrane till it's equal on both sides. That's all there is to dialysis. We either take your blood out and we do the filter, and we put a what's called a bath on the other side of your blood and suck all the bad stuff out of it that way. Or inside each of our bodies, we have this peritoneal cavity, and rather than taking the blood out and running it next to the bath, we'll put essentially the same thing as the bath inside your belly, and your peritoneum acts as that semi-permeable membrane, and the dialysis happens inside you. And that's much slower though. People do that all night, every night.
Now, I've been looking into the subject for a little while, and it's more prevalent than people would imagine. What percentage of the population?
Yeah,
it's larger than anybody knows, isn't it?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I had no idea anybody other than Bill Watkins was on dialysis, and there's about 750,000 Americans
Wow.
on dialysis,
Wow.
and most of them go to dialysis. We're completely upside down from the rest of the world. Most in a lot of things, but in dialysis as well. In most countries, people do their dialysis at home. And in the United States, about 80% of the dialysis population goes to dialysis centers for their dialysis.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that it's easy for a facility to accommodate a patient. I guess they have to bring that equipment into a home when they're doing home dialysis. Is that eligible? Is everybody eligible for that?
So, your physician, the nephrologist, has to deem you, eligible for it. There are some people that really shouldn't be at home. They're either frail or it depends upon the type of home dialysis. To get back to your other question real quick, so it's hemodialysis on one side, peritoneal dialysis on the other. And you can do either one of those at home. So people do home hemo, and they have, here at the dialysis center, of course, we've got $1 million water system, and everything is gigantomous, right? But they do make home hemo machines with a small water purification system, and they sit like on a microwave cart, and so they don't take up a ton of room because it's just for one person. So they don't need to make the volume of water that we need to make here. So it's a very similar machine, but not the same. And then the peritoneal that you do overnight, that too is a very small machine, sits on a cart next to your bed.
Now, I wanted to talk about costs. Who actually pays for dialysis?
Well, luckily, Medicare pays for dialysis. The Omnibus Budget Act of 1972.
That was Nixon, right?
Yeah. They decided back then that dialysis was so expensive. They needed to bail out the state governments for people on medical assistance, where the states were paying for it. And they also needed to bail out the commercial insurance companies. They have what's called a coordination of benefits period. So, you or I both working, having employer group health plan, even if we went on dialysis and continued to work and continued to have our commercial insurance, after 33 months, we would become Medicare primary. So that it's the Fed basically stopping the bleeding for the, for the employer group health plans.
And I know some recent legislation and an actual executive order by President Trump is kind of changing uh, the way things are done. I wanted to talk about transplants. Uh, the machines, I'm sure if you're going to this dialysis center all the time, uh, that's one thing. It's great that this exists, but transplants, I would imagine, is a more permanent solution.
Hands down, the very best modality for anyone with kidney failure is a transplant. Um, they don't they don't last forever. Most transplants will last about 10 years, but they're one, your quality of life. You've gone from having to do dialysis, however, whatever your prescription is, either 3 times a week in center for hours and hours, or overnight every night, to not requiring dialysis, not having those dietary restrictions, not having the restrictions on your fluid. And really all that you have to do is take immunosuppressive drugs, um, so that you don't reject the kidney. It is uh, definitely the best for people's health. It is by far less expensive
It's less
uh,
expensive for the taxpayer.
for the taxpayer. Yeah, the taxpayers pay about $3.4 billion a year to support kidney transplant patients, and they pay about $36 billion a year to pay for dialysis.
That's a
So
big cut.
obviously, if you could transplant more people, it would be better all the way around. And Mr. Trump, being a businessman, sees that. Traditionally, transplant, whether we like it or not, money makes the world go around. And transplant hasn't been overly pushed uh, by the medical community. And it's because what happens, you transplant a patient and they're better, so they don't require care. And it's a bad business model to
Well,
send
that's
people.
why I asked you personally because you are in this industry, and you know it might be a conflict of interest to, uh,
Yeah, yeah.
But I know you. Excuse me. I know you as a person. You're one of those people who would always guide people to the best solution.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I like to think so. I, you know, Getting back to that executive order. Uh, so in this executive order, Mr. Trump has incentivized uh, the nephrology industry to get people on home dialysis, which is better for them and also less costly than in-center dialysis. And he's also incentivized transplant. So it's not a total loss for the nephrologist to have his patient transplanted. If they, when they do the transplant, when a transplant happens and it's successful, then the nephrologist back at the dialysis center gets a little change in his pocket. After a year, if the patient is still out on transplant, the nephrologist gets a little bit more, and that goes on for like 3 years, to where they have three separate kind of paybacks to the nephrologist for keeping them out on transplant and keeping them happy and well.
So incentive to keep the costs down overall. So I wanted to ask you uh, about what you would like to see changed in the dialysis field.
Well, I think that the biggest thing is I've always been a huge uh, proponent of self-care, dialysis and home dialysis. And so I'm very, very pleased with this bill and with the direction that the industry is going to go toward home dialysis. It's an executive order, and it's been something that, you know, those of us that are in dialysis, that are into home therapies, have been pushing for 20 years. So we just got a huge boost. My side hustle, Compass Home Dialysis.
You always have a side hustle. We've known each other for what, 40 years or so?
Something like
Something
that.
like that.
What we do at that company is we do home dialysis, but we do it for people in nursing homes. So we actually go in and provide home dialysis
right
to them in their home,
nice.
Which is in a skilled nursing facility, which is another great thing, because these people, many of them in super compromised positions, are being loaded into ambulances, taken to these dialysis centers,
right.
exposed to the elements, exposed now to COVID and all kinds of other viruses and stuff, where we see it that if we can go in there and provide that home dialysis to them right where they live, it totally changes their quality of life for the better and keeps them healthier. Well, you asked what I would like to see. I'd like to see everyone on home dialysis. Dialysis patients, especially now, in the age of COVID, don't have any business being out and about. They're way immunosuppressed and vulnerable.
Which is safer on the COVID, with the COVID situation? What is the safest way of administering dialysis?
Well, hands down, at home is best.
At home,
because you're basically quarantined to your home. Most people that do home dialysis do it themselves. We train them at a dialysis center, and then they do it themselves.
Wow.
There's also staff assisted home, but at least then that's one staff member going in and out of a home environment that's controlled. So that's safest. In the industry of inpatient or outpatient dialysis, where they're coming here to the dialysis center, we had to very quickly stand up a way to deal with it. And how we do that is by cohorting the patients with COVID. So each of us, and I have to say that Fresenius and DaVita, being on opposite sides of the fence, or being direct competitors, have done an outstanding job of working together in this pandemic. So what happens now is everyone that comes to the dialysis center, just like everywhere else we go, the temperature is taken, the mask, they ask the questions. If there's any reason to suspect COVID, then they need to go to a cohort clinic. So we've taken about 1 in every 10 clinics and taken all the healthy patients out of it and made it a cohort clinic, where only people that are suspected of COVID or positive for COVID go for dialysis.
Wow. Well, speaking of transplants, I wanted to give out this internet address, giveandlive.us. That's where, if you're interested in kidney donation, you can get a whole lot of information there. Right now, Paul, what is the status of kidney availability, and how is that process done?
So unfortunately, it's not great. There's the need way exceeds, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, but we definitely need more people. When you think about it, you have absolutely, regardless of what your beliefs are, when you expire and you are no longer in need of your body, there are people that could gravely benefit from so many body parts: your eyes, your lungs, your kidneys. I mean, it's unbelievable that, I mean, really, if I could leave one takeaway, it's Google, and just look at a couple of these stories about people's lives being changed because somebody made this sacrifice during that awful time.
Right.
You know, I mean, I just watched an interview the other day of this father, and John, this guy was like, you know, a little bit younger than us. His 19-year-old daughter was killed,
Oh God.
and he knew that she was passionate about this. And to hear this man tell the story,
Oh.
man, oh man, I don't. It's amazing stuff. So I mean, really, and it's as simple as, you know, when you get your license renewed and they say, "Do you want to be an organ donor?" All you got to do is say yes.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
and let people know. Make sure that your family knows that if something happens to you on the way home from work, that you want other people to benefit. Real quick on that, I saw another. You know, I'm always posting
Yes.
stuff. You
Yeah.
know,
I don't know how you do it 5 times a day.
I saw this other deal where this guy, I don't know whether I posted this one or not. I probably must have. This guy, a dad, rode his bicycle some like 2,700 miles. So he's obviously an enthusiast with this. His daughter, he lost his daughter tragically, another daughter tragically. This dude rode his bike 2,700 miles to meet the man who had his daughter's heart. Oh my gosh, John, if you see this video of this guy taking this stethoscope and listening to his daughter's heart beating in this man's chest.
That would tear
I
me
mean,
up.
dude,
I can't even watch cartoons
this
without
is tear-jerking stuff.
You know, I used to be able to hold it back, but now, you ask
Isn't that
Cecilia.
something?
You ask Cecilia, she'll tell you, oh yeah, he's a softie. But now, do you have to be a certain blood types? I know there's a matching process with kidney transplants.
There is. Kidneys are matched on an antigen process. So a 6 antigen process. So that just an antigen, for lack of better terminology, is like a marker. Like blood type is one antigen. So there's 6 antigens that you match an organ on. Any organ, doesn't matter. On. And the more antigens that match, the better match it's going to be. UNOS, which is the United Organ Sharing Organization, they keep track of all of this stuff at Kidney One. So they know every single person that's on the list, and they have these markers. They get it, and when a kidney becomes available, they test it, and based on proximity and antigens, they call usually 3 people for that kidney, because anybody could have like a cold or have taken some medicine or be out of the country or whatever. So they'll call the top 3 people for that kidney, and the kidney will go in one of them. I also wanted to mention, you mentioned that website. Here in the Philadelphia market, if you Google, I don't have it on the top of my head, but Gift of Life is our organ procurement agency here in the Pennsylvania, in the tri-state area. And it's right downtown in Philadelphia. And tremendous website, resource, tons of information on transplantation and on donation.
And that's for kidney. Oh, there it is. Gift of Life Donor Program. I have 2 monitors. I'm doing double duty over here. So it's donors1.org. That's pretty simple. Yeah, that's beautiful.
You know, the other type of donation that's out there that I actually had a patient receive a kidney on is altruistic donation. And this is where, and you got to wonder what happened in somebody's life or what they did to make them say, you know what, I'm going to donate my kidney today. They don't say who they're donating it to, nothing. They just walk into a transplant center and say, I want to give up one of my kidneys.
Wow. Wow.
You
What a
know?
sacrifice. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm thinking. You need more of that, correct?
Yeah, how about it?
Yeah. That you're explaining it like it's a rare thing that somebody would walk in and do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of transplants done a year. I mean, so I go through, let's say, 200 patients a year, right? With people coming and going. And during the course of a typical year for me, with a caseload like that, on a good year, I'll see maybe 5 transplants.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's definitely not nearly enough. And a lot of them are now they're doing great things. They're taking HIV kidneys and putting them in people with renal failure and HIV. So they didn't used to do that.
Oh.
It also used to be that if you had hepatitis C, they wouldn't use that kidney either. And now people are actually able to get on a list and get a kidney faster if they're willing to take a hepatitis C kidney. And we can treat hepatitis C now, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
and as far as being able to accept the organ, the drugs are getting better for that kind of thing too.
yeah, well, the immunosuppressants are really pretty good. They've been good for quite some time. So that's not really the issue at all. The issue is 100% availability. So what the industry has been doing is trying to educate people to increase availability, and B, find out how to better utilize wasted organs like hepatitis C organs, HIV organs, organs that were not formerly used. Now, lots of people are taking hepatitis C organs because with the drugs that are available, you can get rid of hepatitis C in 10 weeks. So it's worth it. If you're looking at 3 years on a waiting list and someone says, well, you can have this hepatitis C kidney now, then we'll give you the drugs to cure you of the hepatitis C with a 3-month turnaround, you're going to be done. Put me in that line.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I'm sure they could benefit greatly from that. It's amazing what medicine's been able to do in the past 20 years even.
Yep.
Well, Paul D. Gordon, the D stands for dialysis, I believe. Renal social worker. That's such a simple title for all the things that you do, though. You're a huge proponent, and as long as I've known you, you've been in this field, and you're currently working with Fresenius, and your 11 side jobs that you're doing. That's incredible, and I wish you and the family all the best, and I want to thank you for taking the time to describe this thing that not a lot of people know about. And it seems everybody knows somebody who at least knows somebody that is going through dialysis. And we appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much, John. Best to you and yours. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thanks. And we'll talk to you soon. And this is Ralston Live on 98.5 FM WXPM.